An aide slipped into my room after midnight and pressed a phone into my hand. She was young and scared and kind. She whispered, "Mr. Cross, I could lose my job for this. But your family told the front desk to keep you off the phones and to turn away any visitors except them." She glanced at the door. "And I heard your son on his cell in the hallway. He said they're listing your house on Thursday. Here, call whoever you need to call. Just please don't tell anyone it was me." Then she was gone. And I lay in the dark of a rundown nursing home, holding a borrowed phone, while my children sold my house out from under me. What they didn't know is that I knew this building better than they did. Because I owned it. I owned the whole company. Welcome back to The Forgotten Parent. Grab your coffee, get comfortable, and remember the people in these stories had every chance to do right by the ones who raised them. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment, and be sure to subscribe. You're going to want to stay till the end. My name is Bennett Cross. I am 79 years old. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. Or I did, before my children decided where I'd live. I drive a plain gray Buick. I wear a cardigan with a hole starting at the cuff. I drink my coffee black and my beer warm, and I keep to myself. If you saw me feeding the ducks at Freedom Park, you'd think there's a nice old man with a fixed income and time on his hands. You'd be right about the time. But I want to tell you a secret, and you'll need it, so hold on to it. 50 years ago, I started buying buildings, small ones, at first. Then I noticed that this country was getting older and that nobody wanted to think about where the old would go. So I started building places for them. Senior homes. Care facilities. Assisted living. I built a company, Cross Senior Living, that owns and runs 41 facilities across 3 states. I built it because of my mother. Let me tell you about her, because she's the reason for all of it. Her name was Opal. She raised me alone on a waitress's wages. She worked her body down to nothing so I could have a chance. And when she got old and sick, I didn't have money yet. I couldn't care for her the way she needed. So she went into a county home, a terrible one. I visited every week. And every week I watched them treat my mother, the strongest woman I ever knew, like a piece of furniture that complained. They left her alone. They let her call button ring. She got smaller and quieter every time I came. She died in a room that smelled of bleach and neglect, holding my hand, apologizing to me for being a burden. Apologizing, my mother, who gave me everything, spent her last breath sorry she'd cost me trouble. I drove home that night and I made a vow on the steering wheel. I would get rich. And I would build places where no one's mother ever had to apologize for growing old. That vow became 41 buildings. It became my whole life. And I swore no one under my roof would ever feel the way Opal felt. Then I got old myself, and I stepped back, and I handed the day-to-day to executives, and I got quiet. Too quiet, it turns out. Because when you get quiet, people forget you're still watching. Even your own family. Especially your own family. Let me tell you about my children. My son is Colton. He's 52. My daughter is Sabrina. She's 49. They grew up comfortable, because I made sure of it, and comfort, I've learned, can rot a person if there's nothing underneath it. Neither of them ever worked a day at Cross Senior Living. Neither of them ever asked what I actually did. They knew their father had some real estate. They did not know the size of it. I never told them. I wanted to see who they'd be without the number in front of them. Now I know. Now I know exactly who they are. The signs were there for years. I looked past every one. Colton only called when a business of his was failing and he needed a loan. There were several. I always paid. Sabrina visited twice a year, and both times she walked through my house like an appraiser, touching things, pricing them with her eyes. When my wife, their mother, was dying, they argued about the funeral budget in the next room while she was still breathing. I heard them. I said nothing. I told myself grief makes people strange. I have told myself that sentence about my children more times than I can count. It's the lie a parent uses to keep loving what keeps hurting him. The truth is, my kids had been circling my money like patient birds for 20 years. They were just waiting for me to slow down enough to land on. Last spring, I slowed down, and they landed. Last spring, I had a fall. Nothing serious. A bruised hip, a night in the hospital. But it frightened my children. Not for me. For their inheritance. A fall means a will means a timeline. And while I was still groggy in that hospital bed, sore and half-medicated, Colton showed up with a folder and a pen and a lawyer he'd hired. He was so gentle about it. "Dad, we just want to make sure you're taken care of. Let us handle things while you heal. Sign here and here." It was a power of attorney, full control, over my care, my house, my accounts. I was tired and hurting, and he was my son. So I signed. That signature is the biggest mistake I have made in 79 years, and I've made some big ones. Within 2 weeks, they'd moved me out of my own house, into Maplewood Care, on the east side of Charlotte. A tired, understaffed, forgotten little facility. They told me it was temporary, just until I was stronger. They told the staff I was confused, that I got agitated, that I made up stories. They limited my visitors. They limited my phone. They set me adrift in a beige room with a broken window latch, and they went home to plan the sale of my house. My son hugged me on the way out and said, "This is for the best, Dad," and I watched him go. And I thought, he really believes I'm gone. He's already grieving the version of me that's useful and skipping the rest. I want to tell you the loneliest part. It wasn't the room. It wasn't even the phone. It was the first night when I realized that my own children had looked at me, a whole man, their father, and decided the most convenient thing was for me to disappear. Not die, exactly, just disappear. Become a monthly bill they'd pay from my own money until the bills stopped coming. Some of you know this fear, the fear of being warehoused, of being loved in theory and stored in practice, of hearing it's for the best, Dad, from the child whose diapers you changed, as they close a door you can't open from the inside. It is the coldest feeling I know. And I built 41 buildings trying to make sure no one would ever feel it. And then my own family gave it to me. If you've made it this far, do me one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it. But it costs you nothing and means everything to us. Thank you, genuinely. Now let me tell you what I saw at Maplewood. Here is the thing my children never understood. They didn't dump me in a stranger's facility. They dumped me in my own. Maplewood Care is a cross-senior living property. My company owns the building, the license, the payroll. My signature, somewhere up the chain, is on every paycheck in that place. They put me in the one nursing home on earth where I was, secretly, the landlord of everyone who walked in the door. They thought they were burying me. They'd checked me into my own house. But I didn't announce it. Not right away. Because for the first time in years, I was seeing my company from the inside, from the bed. And what I saw broke my heart. Maplewood was being run into the ground. The administrator, a man named Dwight, cut every corner. Not enough staff. Cheap food. Residents left too long in wet sheets. Call buttons that rang for an hour. Lonely old people parked in front of a television, forgotten by families who never came. This was happening in a building with my name on the deed. Under my company. On my watch. I had gotten quiet and stepped back and trusted the wrong people, and the very thing I'd built my life to prevent was happening under my own roof. To me, and to 100 others just like me. And in the middle of all that neglect, there was one light. Her name was Rosa, the aide who gave me the phone. Rosa worked doubles for low pay and treated every single resident like her own grandparent. She learned our names. She remembered that Mr. Feeney liked his eggs soft and that Mrs. Alvarez was frightened of the dark. She stayed late, off the clock, to sit with the ones who were dying alone. She was everything right about my company, working inside everything wrong with it. And she had no idea the confused old man in room 12 owned the place she was quietly holding together with her bare hands. So I got very, very quiet. The way I do. And I watched. And I remembered. And I planned. I used Rosa's phone that first night, but not to call my children. I called my chief operating officer, a good man named Walt Preston who'd been with me 20 years. I woke him up. I said, "Walt, it's Bennett. Don't say my name out loud. I need you to do something, and I need it done quietly, and I need it done right." And Walt, God bless him, didn't ask a single question. He just said, "Yes, sir, what do you need?" That's when I knew I still had my company, even if my family had taken everything else. For 3 weeks, I stayed at Maplewood as an ordinary resident. On purpose. I wanted to see all of it. I wanted the truth, not a cleaned-up tour. Walt fed me information quietly. He confirmed the neglect reports. He pulled Dwight's numbers and found money that should have gone to care, lining a budget that made Dwight look good for a bonus. He confirmed that my children had already contacted a realtor about my house and had begun moving money out of my accounts under that power of attorney. Everything was exactly as bad as it looked. And I let 3 more weeks of it wash over me, taking notes, because a man who's about to fix everything gets one chance to see everything first. There was one night in those 3 weeks I'll never forget. It was late. I heard crying down the hall. Mrs. Alvarez. Afraid of the dark, alone, her call button ringing and ringing. No one came. So I got up. On my sore hip, in the dark, a 79-year-old man in a paper gown. I shuffled down that hall myself. I found her room. I sat with her. I held her hand until she stopped shaking. I sang the only Spanish song I knew badly, the one my dishwasher used to hum 40 years ago. And she laughed through her tears at how bad I was. And she fell asleep holding my hand. I sat in that dark room and I thought about my mother. About Opal, alone, apologizing, and I thought, this is my building. My name is on this. And an old woman just cried alone in the dark on my watch, and a broken old man was the only one who came. Something hardened in me that night. Not anger. Purpose, the old purpose. The steering wheel vow, come back to life. I wasn't a victim in that home anymore. I was the owner, and I had seen enough. I also, in those 3 weeks, made friends. Real ones, Mr. Feeney, who'd been a jazz drummer and still tapped rhythms on his tray. Mrs. Alvarez, who taught me 6 words of Spanish a day. A dozen others, forgotten by families who'd done to them exactly what mine did to me. I ate the bad food with them. I waited on the slow call buttons with them. I became one of them. And somewhere in those 3 weeks, this stopped being about my revenge and started being about their rescue. I wasn't just going to fix this for me. I was going to fix it for room after room of people the world had decided to forget. That's the promise I'd made 50 years ago. I just never had to keep it from the inside before. Then, on a Thursday morning, the day my children planned to list my house, I made my move. I asked Rosa to help me put on my good cardigan, the one without the hole, and I asked her to wheel me to the front lobby at 10 o'clock. She didn't know why. And at 10 o'clock, a line of black cars pulled up to Maplewood Care. Out stepped Walt, my COO and the regional director, and 2 members of my board, and my personal attorney. They walked into that shabby lobby in their good suits, and they came straight to the old man in the wheelchair in the cardigan, and Walt said, loud enough for the whole front desk to hear, "Good morning, Mr. Cross. The board is assembled. We're ready when you are." The receptionist looked up. Confused, Dwight, the administrator, came hurrying out of his office to see what the commotion was. He looked at the suits. He looked at me. He said, "I'm sorry. Who is this resident?" And Walt turned to him and said, "This resident is Bennett Cross, as in Cross Senior Living, as in the founder and majority owner of the company that signs your paycheck, Dwight. He's been a resident in your facility for 3 weeks. Would you like to explain to him what he's seen?" I have never watched a man's face fall so far so fast. Dwight went the color of the beige walls. He started to stammer. I held up my hand, and I said, quietly, in the voice I hadn't used in years, the founder's voice, "Dwight, I've spent 3 weeks in a wet bed listening to call buttons ring for an hour. I've eaten the food you cut corners on. I've watched Mrs. Alvarez cry in the dark because nobody came. You have a bonus built on money you stole from these people's care. You're done. Security will walk you out. Do not take anything but your coat." He was gone in 10 minutes, and then I got to work on the thing that mattered. I named Rosa the acting administrator of Maplewood Care that morning. Right there in the lobby. A 26-year-old aide who worked doubles and knew everyone's name. Walt started to say something about her lack of a degree, and I looked at him, and he stopped. Because he's known me 20 years and he knows that look. I said, "Walt, I've met 100 administrators with degrees who let old women cry in the dark. This one stayed late, off the clock, to hold their hands. That's the only credential I care about. Promote her. Pay her triple. Give her whatever she needs to fix this place. And then let's go fix the other 40. Rosa put both hands over her mouth and sat down hard in a chair. I told her to save the crying for the paperwork. She's going to run that building better than anyone I've ever hired. Now, my children, I want to tell you what I did, because you might expect prison, and I'll explain why it wasn't that. I called Colton and Sabrina to Maplewood that afternoon. They came, annoyed, thinking the old man was making a fuss. They walked into a conference room and found their father in his good cardigan, at the head of a table, flanked by his board and his attorney. I watched them understand, slowly, that the ground had shifted. Colton said, "Dad, what is all this?" And I told them. All of it. That I owned the company. That I owned the very building they'd hidden me in. That I'd watched them plan to sell my house and drain my accounts under a power of attorney they'd rushed me into signing while I was medicated in a hospital bed. The color went out of both of them. Sabrina started to cry, the frightened kind, not the sorry kind. Colton went into his salesman voice. "Dad, we were doing what was best for you. The doctors said I stopped him. No doctor told you to sell my house on a Thursday, Colton. No doctor told you to take my phone." I slid a document across the table. "This revokes the power of attorney as of this morning. My attorney has already filed it. You have no control over me, my house, or my money. Effective now." Colton's mouth opened and closed. Sabrina sobbed harder. What they did was not quite a crime a court would jail them for. They'd used a signed document, a coerced one, a shameful one, but signed. I could have fought it out in court for years, and maybe won, and put my own children in a cell. I thought about it. But I've spent my life around endings. I've watched a lot of people die in my facilities, and I've learned that you don't get to take bitterness with you. So I chose something else. Not mercy, exactly. Consequence, without cruelty. I revoked the power of attorney. I restored my house. And I changed my will. Colton and Sabrina, who tried to warehouse their father to reach his money faster, will receive from that money exactly what they gave their father in that home. A small, cold allotment. Enough not to starve, not a penny more. The bulk of my estate now goes to a foundation. It will make sure that no one in a Cross facility is ever left in the dark again, in every sense. There is one grandchild I have to tell you about. Colton's boy, My grandson Micah, he's 20. And Micah was the only person in my family who visited me at Maplewood. Every single week, his parents told him I was confused, that I might not know him, that visiting was pointless. He came anyway. He'd sit with me for hours. He brought me terrible gas station coffee because he remembered I like it black. He never once treated me like I was gone. He didn't know about the company. He didn't know about any of it. He just loved his grandfather and refused to abandon him. When I revealed everything, Micah was as shocked as anyone. He didn't visit for the money. He didn't know there was any. He visited because that's who he is. The bulk of my estate goes to the foundation. But a real piece of it, and my house, and my old gray Buick, go to Micah. Not because he's blood. Because when they told him I was as good as gone, he was the only one who came to see for himself. Pay attention to the ones who show up when there's supposedly nothing left to gain. They're showing you exactly who they are. Maplewood is a different place now. Rosa runs it. The call buttons get answered in 2 minutes, because she made that the rule and staffed it to be true. The food is good. Mr. Feeney has a real drum kit in the activity room now. Mrs. Alvarez has a nightlight and someone who checks on her every night without fail. I visit often, not as the owner, as Bennett from room 12, who still owes Mrs. Alvarez 6 words of Spanish a day. I kept my little room there. I stay in it sometimes, on purpose, to remember. A company runs differently when the man at the top has slept in the worst bed in the building. I want to say one more thing directly to you, especially the ones with children. I know some of you are watching this and thinking about your own kids, wondering there's a cold little fear that lives in a lot of us as we age. What will they do with me when I'm slow? Will they show up, or will they storm me? I'm not going to tell you not to be afraid. I was afraid, and I was right to be, and it happened to me anyway. What I'll tell you is this: watch who shows up, not who promises. Who shows up? When the money's hidden and the mind seems gone and there's supposedly nothing left to gain. The one who keeps coming to that beige room anyway, week after week, with the bad coffee. That's your real family. It might not be the one you expect. For me, it was a 20-year-old grandson who didn't know I had a dime. Find your Micah. Leave them everything that matters. And the ones who only come to price the furniture, let them have exactly what they came for. Nothing more. And I didn't stop at Maplewood. I couldn't. If it was this bad in the building I happened to land in, what about the other 40? So I did something I should have done years ago. I went back to work. At 79. I visited every single Cross facility, unannounced, as a resident when I could manage it, as the founder when I couldn't. I slept in the beds. I ate the food. I timed the call buttons myself, with the Timex on my wrist. I found 3 more Dwights and walked them out. I found a dozen more Rosas and promoted every one. It took me 8 months. It was the best 8 months of work I've done since I was young. Because it turns out the vow I made on that steering wheel 40 years ago wasn't finished. I'd built the buildings. But I'd stepped back and let them drift. A promise like that isn't a building. It's a thing you have to keep keeping, every day with your own 2 eyes. I forgot that for a while. My children, in trying to throw me away, reminded me. That's the strange gift buried in all of this. They gave me my purpose back. They just meant to give me a beige room to die in. Here's what I want to leave you with, and then I'll let you go. We are all going to get old, if we're lucky. We are all, someday, going to be the person in the bed, hoping someone comes. So look at how the old are treated, in your family and in your world, because you are looking at your own future. My children tried to storm me where I couldn't be seen. They forgot that a man who spends his life building places for the forgotten might just know his way around the inside of one. They thought they were burying me. They handed me the keys to the exact place I'd spent 50 years trying to fix. So I fixed it. From the inside. From the worst bed in the building. That's the only place you can ever really fix anything from. Anyway, if you like this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. And as always, thank you for being part of this family.